The sun was setting behind the majestic baobab trees of Umutoni village, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Adanna sat by the riverbank, listening to the gentle hush of water flowing over smooth stones, contemplating the day's end. She was a beautiful young woman with a spirit as warm as the African sun, and a laugh that tinkled like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The water's surface reflected a mosaic of colors: tangerine, gold, and faint pink, reminding her of the vibrant potential life held. A light breeze rustled the leaves around her, as though nature itself leaned in to hear her heart's musings. That evening, her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Adanna, you are of age. It's time you find a husband." The thought both excited and worried her. She longed for love, but feared the unknown. She stared at her own reflection in the water, whispering a silent prayer for guidance, not knowing how her life was about to change. Small ripples in the river distorted her features, almost as though the future were shifting in unpredictable ways beneath the calm surface of her life. Early the next morning, Adanna's mother, Mama Nafula, led her through a winding path that cut across lush farmland to Prophet Mbeki's humble dwelling. The old man was known far and wide for his visions and wise counsel. Dew clung to the tall grasses, and the morning air smelled of fertile earth, suggesting a day ripe with possibility. With a humble bow, Adanna presented him an offering of roasted yams and goat milk, before pouring out her heart's desire. The prophet closed his eyes in deep concentration, and after a few moments, he said, "Your future husband's name will be Joe." His words sent a rush of relief through Adanna, and she smiled, feeling her heart flutter with new hope. A gentle warmth seemed to radiate through the prophet's hut, as though unseen forces confirmed his prophecy. Armed with the prophet's message, Adanna felt the weight of uncertainty lift off her shoulders. She began to look forward to the day she would meet this Joe who was destined for her. Her days felt brighter, and her nights calmer as she imagined the moment fate would lead her to him. She would sometimes catch herself humming tunes while she worked, the melody fueled by cautious optimism. Still, she knew life did not always move at the pace of one's desires. So, she kept the prophecy close to her heart, determined to remain patient and trust in the will of the ancestors. Quiet moments by the river became her sanctuary, where she could daydream about the man named Joe, who, somehow, was already a part of her life's tapestry. Soon after speaking with Prophet Mbeki, Adanna immersed herself in her daily duties, tending the vegetable garden and feeding the chickens. Each time a traveling merchant or distant cousin visited the village, she secretly wondered if he might be Joe. The thought made her pulse quicken, a reminder that destiny could appear at any moment. Yet no man of that name appeared, and her hopes remained unfulfilled. Still, she kept her heart strong, remembering the prophet's gentle assurance. For the first time in a long while, the future felt certain, even if unseen. At night, she would murmur small prayers of gratitude for the promise of tomorrow. One day, while helping Mama Nafala sell millet at the bustling village marketplace, Adanna heard whispers of a group of young men who had arrived for a festival. Apparently, they were strikingly handsome and seeking brides. Her heart skipped a beat, for she remembered the prophecy. Excitement tingled in her fingertips as she passed sackfuls of millet to eager buyers. The market was alive with drums, singing, and the aromas of roasted maize. Adanna found herself smiling at the thought of possibility. In her mind, she pictured the face of a man named Joe. She felt a surge of excitement, wondering if fate was about to knock on her door. The buzz of conversation and the vibrant colors of kente cloth swirling around her only heightened her sense of anticipation. The festival day arrived with bright kente cloths fluttering in the breeze and lively dances filling the air. Children wove between the stalls, laughing and chasing one another as the music rose in joyous waves. Adanna, adorned in her finest attire, felt a rush of exhilaration swirl in her chest. She noticed how her feet tapped involuntarily to the rhythms that echoed through the village. In the swirl of music and people, she was introduced to several men from neighboring villages. Her smile turned shy and polite with each handshake, but none were called Joe. Disappointment weighed lightly on her heart, but she refused to lose hope, remembering the prophet's words. She also reassured herself that destiny could be subtle. Perhaps Joe was waiting just out of sight. As the festival died down, Adanna found herself resting near a group of young men discussing their travels. Her ears perked up when she heard the name Joe mentioned in passing. She subtly moved closer, anticipation fluttering in her chest. The men spoke animatedly, describing adventures and people they had encountered. However, the man called Joe was not among them. They were only recounting stories of a friend named Joe who would join them soon. Adanna's pulse quickened. Could this friend be the Joe she sought? Little did she know, her curiosity was about to lead her into a grand puzzle. A slight breeze rustled the festival banners, as if heralding the complexities to come. A week after the festival, word spread that a new visitor had arrived in Umutoni. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with gentle eyes and a quiet confidence. When rumors said his name was Joe, Adanna's heart leaped with joy. She felt a mingling of nerves and hope swirl in the pit of her stomach. She approached him with a respectful bow and introduced herself. His warm greeting and deep laughter resonated in her soul. However, as they spoke, she sensed something unspoken, an air of mystery she couldn't quite place. She wondered if this was truly the man the prophet meant. The gentle curve of his smile hinted at kindness, yet she sensed hidden depths behind his calm demeanor. Barely had Adanna begun to grow acquainted with the first Joe when another visitor named Joe appeared in the village. This Joe was shorter, with sharp features and an infectious smile that lit up his entire face. He was a traveling merchant, known for his smooth words and storytelling. He seemed to arrive in a swirl of colorful fabrics and exotic fragrances. Adanna found herself spellbound by his tales of distant lands. Each evening, he spun enchanting stories under the moonlit sky. Yet she couldn't ignore the unease twisting in her stomach. Why were there suddenly multiple Joes? Was the prophecy leading her into a maze of choices rather than a straightforward answer? The third Joe arrived on a scorching afternoon, weaving his way through the dusty paths of Umutoni village. He was a musician, carrying a carved wooden flute and a drum slung over his shoulder. His presence was as mesmerizing as the tunes he played. He seemed to bring with him an air of artistic wonder. By now, Adanna was torn. The prophecy stated a man named Joe would be her husband, but she hadn't expected several men with that name. Each of them fascinated her in different ways. She recalled Prophet Mbeki's words and realized her journey might be more challenging than she anticipated. Uncertainty pressed on her heart, yet a strange thrill accompanied it. Not long after, a soft-spoken scholar also arrived in Umutoni. He introduced himself simply as Joe. His manners were refined, his voice gentle. He carried a stack of books, from which he shared verses of wisdom he had collected over years of traveling. The sight of these well-worn tomes made Adanna curious about the breadth of knowledge he possessed. Adanna found his calm presence reassuring. In his gaze, she saw a quiet determination and kindness. The complexity of her situation deepened, for she could easily imagine a future with each Joe she'd met so far. Sometimes she wondered if there was an unseen plan behind so many Joes appearing at once, or if this was life's way of testing her heart's discernment. The final Joe appeared under the cover of dusk, quietly slipping into the village unnoticed by most. He was robed in dark colors and spoke in a low, measured tone. Although he exuded confidence, there was a secretive quality to his demeanor. Even the flickering lanterns seemed hesitant to reveal his full expression. Adanna's curiosity flared. She felt drawn to his mysterious nature, yet wary of trusting him too quickly. Now, with 5 men named Joe in her midst, the puzzle set before her grew both intriguing and overwhelming. She wondered if any sign, no matter how subtle, would illuminate the true Joe meant for her heart. Before Adanna could seek further counsel from Prophet Mbeki, she heard devastating news. The prophet had passed away in his sleep the previous night. Grief struck her heart, and despair threatened to consume her. The weight of this loss pressed on her chest, as though the steady pillar of guidance had been suddenly removed. She felt lost, torn between the 5 Joes, each pulling at her heart in different ways. Who among them was the husband foretold by the late prophet? There was no longer an elder to guide her. She had to rely on her own intuition. The night sky, once comforting, seemed endless and dark, reflecting the uncertainty in her mind. Though overwhelmed, Adanna resolved to learn about each Joe, hoping the truth would reveal itself. She believed that by truly knowing them, she might discover which one was destined for her. The idea of unraveling each man's character both thrilled and scared her, as she was stepping onto a path with no clear map. She planned individual outings, walks, conversations, and activities that would show her the true character of each man. With a determined spirit, she set out on what felt like a quest to unravel the prophecy's mystery. Her days became filled with curious excitement, and sometimes she even found herself smiling at the possibilities, despite her confusion. The first Joe, known for his quiet nature, invited Adanna to join him on a stroll by the river. They walked in silence for a while before he spoke softly about his dreams of building a home near the water. Every so often, he would pause to observe the ripples or check on the condition of the soil along the banks. His gentle gestures and thoughtful words comforted Adanna, but she noticed he rarely revealed much about his past. His silence was both reassuring and puzzling, leaving her wondering if he was truly the one. She sensed a deep current beneath his calm exterior, yet she couldn't be certain it matched her own. Adanna ventured to the bustling market with the second Joe, the traveling merchant. Together, they navigated the colorful stalls, chatting with vendors who greeted him like an old friend. He was charismatic and lively. When he spoke, his hands punctuated every word, painting vivid images in her mind. His flair for words seemed endless. He showered her with compliments and entertained passers-by with tales that might have been exaggerated. While Adanna enjoyed his vivacity, she questioned how much of his persona was genuine. Still, she couldn't deny that his energy lit a certain spark in her that made everyday moments feel exciting. One evening, the third Joe, the musician, invited Adanna to watch the sunset over the plains. The golden horizon stretched infinitely, and he played haunting melodies on his flute, which stirred her soul. Each note seemed to dance with the last rays of sunlight, weaving an ethereal tapestry in the air. She felt a closeness to him in that moment, touched by his poetic nature, but she also sensed his restless spirit. Could a wanderer like him settle down to be the husband she needed? She couldn't be sure, especially when his eyes lit up at the mere mention of distant lands he longed to see. The fourth Joe, the scholar, offered to share some of his books with Adanna. They sat beneath a large mango tree, reading verses about love, destiny, and wisdom. He spoke softly, his knowledge shining through every sentence. Occasionally, he would pause to reflect on a particular line, inviting her thoughts. Adanna admired his intellect and found comfort in the peaceful aura he exuded. Still, questions lingered. Would their life be grounded in reality or forever immersed in books and ideas? She wondered if his heart had room for everyday joys beyond the pursuit of insight. In the cloak of twilight, Adanna met the fifth Joe near the village edge. He spoke in hushed tones, glancing around as if secrets lurked in every shadow. The intensity of his gaze made her both intrigued and uneasy. Even in the dim light, she noticed the quiet resolve in his posture, as though he carried burdens unspoken. He confided that he had traveled far, searching for a place to call home. Adanna's heart softened at his vulnerability, yet she sensed he held something back, something she couldn't quite fathom. In his silence, she caught a glimpse of a life marked by solitude, raising more questions than answers. After meeting each Joe, Adanna found herself alone in her hut, reflecting on the qualities of each man. One was gentle, another boisterous, another artistic, yet another scholarly, and the last one mysterious. Her emotions swirled like the eddies in the river, pulling her in multiple directions at once. She realized each Joe resonated with a different part of her spirit. This internal conflict left her restless at night. How could she choose if they all seemed equally compelling? Sometimes she felt as though her heart was both blessed and burdened by so many possibilities. In her confusion, Adanna turned to her mother for advice. Over a steaming pot of stew, she shared her encounters with all 5 Joes, describing their unique traits. She hoped Mama Nafula's intuition would guide her. Mama Nafula's eyes sparkled with understanding as she listened. Her mother listened patiently, nodding at intervals. Sometimes the heart knows before the mind can understand, Mama Nafula said gently. Give yourself time, my child. Watch their actions, not just their words. The stew bubbled softly, its comforting aroma filling the hut with a warmth that echoed her mother's wisdom. Mama Nafula suggested that Adanna also consult the village elders. This council of wise men and women had guided families for generations, upholding traditions that gave Umutoni its peace and unity. They were known to approach dilemmas with both practical and spiritual insight. The elders, intrigued by the situation, listened carefully to her story. They noted that love was never purely about names, but rather destiny intertwined with character. They advised her to observe how each Joe served the community, especially during the upcoming harvest festival. Their aged yet keen eyes seemed to look straight into her heart, silently reassuring her that clarity would come. The harvest festival was a grand event, celebrated by singing praises to the ancestors and thanking the land for its bounty. It also became an opportunity for the elders to watch the Joes closely in the presence of the entire village. The preparations filled the air with anticipation. Women ground spices for feasts, men set up canopies, and children practiced dances. Adanna's heart thumped with anticipation. She wondered which Joe would display the virtues of compassion, patience, and respect that she valued so deeply. Little did she know, surprises lay in store. She took comfort in the festival's rhythms, believing they might reveal truths words could not convey. During the festival, the first Joe quietly went around collecting leftover produce from those who had extra. He then distributed it among the elderly who couldn't attend the celebrations due to frailty. His humble demeanor spoke volumes about the kindness in his heart. Adanna noticed his humble kindness. His actions spoke volumes, and her heart stirred with admiration. Perhaps, she thought, the silent Joe had far more compassion than she initially realized. She found herself watching him from afar, feeling new layers of appreciation unfold. Meanwhile, the second Joe took center stage in the festival's entertainment. He regaled the crowd with a flamboyant dance and lively tales of trade routes and distant markets. Applause and laughter followed him wherever he went. The air seemed to crackle with energy as he performed. Adanna watched the crowd delight in his showmanship, but she also recognized how he basked in the attention. She pondered whether his need for applause might overshadow a deeper sense of commitment. Yet she couldn't deny that his vibrant spirit electrified the atmosphere, drawing people in like moths to a flame. As dusk fell, the third Joe, with his flute and drum, played a song in tribute to the village's ancestors. His melodies rose through the night sky like a gentle prayer, weaving the past and present into a heartfelt harmony. The soft glow of lanterns danced across his features as he poured his soul into the performance. People swayed to his music, tears in their eyes, touched by its raw beauty. Adanna felt drawn into the peaceful world he created with each note, yet she worried. When his wanderlust called again, would he leave her behind? The thought of investing her heart in someone with perpetually restless feet gnawed at her. At the storytelling bonfire, the fourth Joe recited proverbs and passages from his books, interpreting them in a way that resonated with the villagers. He spoke of unity, respect, and the power of steadfast love. His voice was measured, each word carefully chosen to enlighten and inspire. The elders nodded in approval. Adanna noticed how effortlessly he brought calm and reflection to the gathering. His knowledge was valuable, but she questioned whether he could balance intellect with the practical demands of everyday life. Sometimes, real-world hardships demanded simpler, more immediate solutions than deep philosophical musings. Throughout the festival, the fifth Joe stood on the outskirts, observing everything with keen eyes. He rarely spoke, but when villagers needed help carrying water or arranging seats, he stepped forward without hesitation. His quiet assistance seemed almost invisible, until one realized how tasks magically got done. Adanna watched him from a distance. She respected his quiet service and started to wonder if, beneath his mysterious exterior, there was a man whose strength lay in silent support and hidden compassion. She also sensed that a heavy cloak of the past still veiled parts of him from her. When the festival ended and lanterns were extinguished, Adanna retired to her hut, feeling both enlightened and conflicted. Each Joe had shown admirable qualities in his own way. She replayed the day in her mind, her heart torn in multiple directions, even as she recognized the sincerity of each man's contributions. Determined not to rush her decision, she decided to keep watch in the weeks ahead, to see how each man behaved in everyday life. After all, anyone can shine during festivities, but true character is revealed in ordinary moments. She held on to the elders' advice like a beacon, guiding her through the fog of uncertainty. In the days following the festival, Adanna found small ways to observe each Joe's daily routines. The first Joe rose at dawn to tend to goats, planting new seeds near the riverbank to prevent soil erosion. The second Joe practiced his trading skills, traveling to nearby villages and returning with exotic goods. Meanwhile, the third Joe often roamed beyond the village, playing his flute for passing caravans. The fourth Joe spent long hours in the communal library, and the fifth, Joe quietly helped whoever needed it, never drawing attention to himself. Adanna watched them all from near and afar, noting how they interacted with others. To delve deeper, Adanna invited each Joe to join her by her family's outdoor fire pit on separate nights. She asked about their hopes, dreams, and struggles. She wanted to see if their private truths matched the impressions she had gathered in public. The first Joe shared a dream of nurturing the land and raising a family. The second, Joe spoke of expanding trade routes. The third, Joe revealed a longing to craft an unforgettable song. The fourth, Joe aspired to build a school, and the fifth Joe confessed he had always searched for a place to belong. Adanna listened intently, her heart absorbing their words like a sponge, seeking any sign of deeper alignment with her own dreams. Adanna noticed each Joe tried to win her favor with a token of affection. The first Joe crafted a small wooden sculpture of a mother cradling a child. The second Joe presented her with an embroidered cloth from a distant land. Each gift seemed to reflect something essential about its giver. The third Joe composed a short melody in her honor, humming it softly whenever she passed. The fourth Joe gifted her a rare book of ancient proverbs, while the fifth Joe offered to repair her broken clay water pot without being asked. Each gesture moved her in a different way. Sometimes she felt her heart was a garden receiving many seeds, yet unsure which would flourish. With so many thoughtful gestures and genuine qualities, Adanna's dilemma only grew. She found herself daydreaming about future possibilities, sometimes imagining a peaceful life by the river with the first Joe, other times thrilling adventures with the second Joe. Her mind conjured vivid visions, but her heart remained divided. Doubts swirled in her mind at night, robbing her of sleep. She prayed to the ancestors, hoping for a sign or a dream to guide her choice. Yet all she heard in her dreams was the echo of the prophet's final words. "Your husband's name will be Joe." She would awaken at dawn, restless and filled with more questions. Not content to rely solely on her observations, Adanna devised small challenges to test each Joe's integrity. She deliberately miscounted coins while purchasing goods from the second Joe. He gently corrected her mistake and returned the excess, earning her respect. His honesty in that simple moment spoke volumes. She asked the first Joe to help build a new chicken coop, and he spent the entire afternoon ensuring it was sturdy. With each test, she found new reasons to admire them all, yet she was still no closer to clarity. It dawned on her that multiple men could have integrity, and still only one could be the right partner for her. Rain clouds gathered over Umutoni, heralding the start of the long-awaited rainy season. The river rose, and thunder echoed through the sky. Villagers hurried to secure their homes and livestock. The damp air clung to their clothes, and the rhythmic drumming of raindrops created a symphony of nature. Amid the turmoil of nature, Adanna felt her own inner storm raging. Which Joe would stand by her side through the thunderous challenges of life? She remembered Mama Nafula's words, "Watch for actions, not just words." Perhaps the coming storms would reveal deeper truths. One particularly stormy evening, Adanna's roof began to leak, and she ran outside to secure it. The first Joe appeared out of nowhere, silently hauling a ladder through the mud. He climbed up to patch the thatch, his face streaked with rain and determination. She watched in awe as he worked without complaint. Dripping wet, he smiled afterward, not complaining about the discomfort. Adanna's heart melted at his dedication. She wondered if fate might be pointing her toward this selfless, steady soul. A small spark of warmth ignited in her chest, reminding her of the comfort found in a dependable partner. A few days later, the second Joe showed his bravery when he rushed to help a cart stuck in thick mud on the outskirts of the village. A young mother and her children were stranded, crying out for assistance. Without hesitation, he waded in, calling for other villagers to join him in freeing the wheels. Without hesitation, he rolled up his sleeves and, alongside other villagers, managed to free the cart. He then offered the family some of his merchandise for free. Adanna heard of his gallant act and felt a newfound admiration for his generosity in times of crisis. She realized that behind his flamboyance lay a genuine streak of compassion. During a lull in the storms, the third Joe disappeared for a couple of days, fueling whispers that he had wandered off again. Just when Adanna concluded he might not return, he came back, drenched in rain, carrying a basket of rare medicinal herbs. Water dripped from his shoulders, but he seemed triumphant rather than tired. He explained how he braved flooded paths to find these healing plants for the village clinic. His passion and courage left Adanna speechless. Could he settle down, or was his soul too restless to remain? The lines between romantic spontaneity and unreliable wanderlust blurred in her mind. While the rains raged, the fourth Joe took it upon himself to tutor children who could not attend the makeshift school. He turned an abandoned hut into a temporary classroom, reading stories by lantern light. The gentle glow flickered over the children's eager faces as they soaked in his lessons. Adanna admired his compassion and resourcefulness, yet she wondered if he was too detached from everyday hardships. Could he balance his devotion to knowledge with the practical demands of family life? She noted that sometimes he seemed lost in deeper thoughts, as though each teaching moment led him to even more questions. During one particularly intense storm, lightning struck a tree near the village well, blocking access to water. The fifth Joe organized a small team to chop the fallen branches. He directed them calmly and efficiently, clearing the path in record time. Once the way was clear, he blended back into the shadows as though he'd never been there. When Adanna went to thank him, he had vanished into the downpour. She felt a pang of curiosity. Who was this man who helped without seeking recognition? Her heart warmed at his quiet diligence, but she also wondered what secrets he carried beneath his silent exterior. When the storm subsided, the village gathered for an evening of ancestral storytelling. Elders recounted legends of love and fate, each story carrying a lesson about patience, honesty, and courage. The crackling firelight illuminated their wizened faces, and children listened wide-eyed. Adanna listened carefully, hoping to glean wisdom that might clarify her dilemma. She noted a recurring theme. True love endures trials, is patient in uncertainty, and shows itself in deeds rather than words. Each legend seemed to nudge her closer to a revelation, though she still felt it hovering just out of reach. That night, while meditating on the elders' stories, Adanna realized she was beginning to feel a deeper connection with one particular Joe. Though she respected them all, her intuition whispered that one Joe reflected her values most closely. The realization both thrilled and unnerved her, as it meant she might have to let the others go. She hesitated to name him in her heart, afraid of making a mistake. She recalled Prophet Mbeki's unwavering declaration and wondered if the prophecy had already been fulfilled in subtle ways. She prayed quietly, hoping a dream might provide clarity, though she braced herself for the possibility of continued ambiguity. Needing solitude, Adanna took a day off from village duties. She retreated to the riverside, sitting on a smooth boulder, where she could watch fish dart beneath the water's surface. Birds chirped in the reeds, adding a peaceful soundtrack to her thoughts. Her mind replayed each interaction with the 5 Joes. She considered their kindness, their flaws, and their ambitions. Then she thought of how each one made her feel: comfort, excitement, wonder, peace, or curiosity. Which emotion signaled true love? She dipped her toes in the cool water, letting her thoughts float as freely as the river's current. Meanwhile, the villagers were abuzz with speculation on which Joe Adanna would choose. Some argued for the merchant's easy charm, others praised the musician's romance, while some admired the scholar's wisdom. Many were intrigued by the farmer's quiet strength or the mysterious one's humility. Gossip flowed like a steady stream through Umutoni. Adanna grew weary of the talk. She longed for a sign from the ancestors, or even a direct message from Prophet Mbeki's spirit. But she knew no such miracle was guaranteed. This was her path to walk. The weight of responsibility to decide her own fate pressed on her, reminding her that love was both a gift and a choice. Just as Adanna thought she might have all the time in the world to decide, a new crisis loomed over the village. Locusts had been spotted in a neighboring settlement, threatening to devour crops and wreak havoc on livelihoods. The mere mention of locusts sent shivers through the farmers, who knew the damage these swarms could inflict. Umutoni prepared to protect their fields. Each Joe rallied in a unique way, organizing, building defenses, or seeking solutions from older farmers. Adanna watched them in action, learning more about their true natures under stress. The clang of tools and the collective voices of villagers strategizing filled the air. The first, Joe collaborated with experienced farmers, constructing large nets and barriers around the key crops. His calm yet unwavering resolve inspired others to work diligently, side by side. He hardly took breaks, driven by a sense of duty to protect the community's food supply. Adanna saw how naturally leadership fit him. He neither boasted nor demanded praise. She realized that with him, there would always be a sense of shared responsibility, ensuring that both household and community thrived. The notion of standing beside such a grounded partner stirred her heart. Knowing that locusts respect no boundary, the second Joe proposed negotiations with nearby villages to coordinate a regional response. He traveled swiftly between communities, securing cooperation and resources. His knack for connecting people shone like never before. His diplomatic skills shone brightly, winning allies wherever he went. Adanna admired his vision and charm, yet she wondered if he would ever settle down long enough to embrace a peaceful family life. Even in crisis, his restlessness surfaced. He thrived on movement, negotiation, and the thrill of bridging distances. The third Joe composed an uplifting chant for the villagers working tirelessly in the fields, believing music could bolster weary spirits. His melodies echoed through the farmland, binding hearts with renewed courage. While others toiled with nets and smoke, he used art to sustain morale. He carried water and supplies to those deep in the fields, ensuring they could work without pause. Adanna marveled at his devotion. His artistic soul breathed life into hard labor, reminding everyone of the beauty of unity. She felt the power of creativity weaving through practical tasks, yet she still worried about his ability to remain in one place. Determined to help, the fourth Joe scoured his books for natural remedies and historical accounts of locust plagues. He discovered an effective method involving repellents made from pepper and garlic extracts. His scholarly approach provided new tools for the community to try. He presented his findings to the elders, who were initially skeptical, but eventually allowed him to lead a trial. Adanna admired his intellect and commitment to innovation. Still, she questioned if practicality sometimes escaped him in daily life. Could a life of shared responsibilities align with his unending quest for knowledge? Throughout the locust crisis, the fifth Joe worked behind the scenes. He carried heavy bundles of supplies, repaired broken tools, and quietly encouraged the exhausted. Wherever he went, tasks seemed to get done more efficiently. People gradually recognized his silent yet vital contributions. Adanna noticed how he never sought acknowledgement. Instead, he slipped away before anyone could heap praise upon him. The quiet strength he displayed pulled at her heartstrings, though his reticence left her longing to know more of his story. Was he simply humble, or did a troubled past keep him from stepping into the light? When the locusts finally arrived, a buzzing, swirling cloud descended upon the village fields. The entire community braced for battle, using nets, repellents, and smoke to ward off the voracious insects. The sky darkened with the sheer mass of wings, and tension gripped every heart. Adanna stood alongside the villagers, panic shining in her eyes. The Joes each played their roles with unyielding determination. Amid the chaos, Adanna felt a profound appreciation for the unity crisis had forged. Even so, a part of her remained watchful, gauging which Joe would remain steadfast under pressure. Against all odds, the village's concerted effort paid off. Though some crops were lost, the bulk of the harvest was saved. Exhausted yet elated, everyone gathered to celebrate their victory, praising the collective resolve. Relief swept over them like a cleansing rain, and the surviving fields stood as a testament to their hard work. Adanna thanked each Joe for his contribution. In her heart, a new realization dawned. The real Joe for her would be the one who not only showed strength, but also truly understood her soul. As she offered her gratitude, she felt the stirrings of clarity, like a faint glow on the horizon. Life slowly returned to normal. The crops grew stronger, nourished by recent rains and protected from locusts. Adanna's mind, however, was far from settled. She felt closer to making a decision, but one final confirmation was needed. The memory of each Joe in the face of adversity lingered in her thoughts. She decided to speak with each Joe once more, asking a direct question. What do you see when you envision a future with me? She hoped their answers would guide her final choice. Something about framing it, this plainly felt both daunting and liberating, as though she were inviting destiny to step forward. When asked, the first Joe described a simple life of farming by the river, raising healthy children, and sharing the land's bounty with neighbors. He spoke little, but his words shone with sincerity. A gentle light seemed to fill his eyes as he painted that vision. Adanna found comfort in that vision. The image of a stable home and a strong family, filled with warmth and cooperation, resonated with her deep longing for rootedness and peace. She could almost see herself in that riverside garden, content and protected. The second Joe painted a picture of traveling across Africa, bringing prosperity to their future home through expanding trade. He promised excitement, wealth, and recognition for their family name. His words carried the thrill of uncharted frontiers. Adanna felt the allure of adventure and the possibilities of helping her people through commerce. But she also wondered if his constant movement and ambition would leave little room for quiet family moments. Could she endure a life perpetually in motion, or did her heart crave a deeper stillness? The third Joe spoke of a life filled with music, love, and inspiration. He dreamed of turning their home into a cultural hub where artists could gather to create and share their talents. The very idea sparkled with creative energy. resonating with Adanna's appreciation for beauty. Though his vision was enchanting, Adanna questioned whether his yearning for discovery would keep him from being fully present. She worried about a life lacking the stability she truly craved. If children were to come, could he channel his spirit of exploration into fatherhood? The fourth Joe envisioned opening a school in the village, empowering children with knowledge. He saw a future where their household was a beacon of learning and intellectual growth. His tone was hopeful, filled with the promise of shaping young minds. Adanna appreciated his passion for education, but she also wondered if family life would compete with his endless pursuit of wisdom. Would he be able to balance both equally? She imagined a home brimming with books, but also recognized the complexity in weaving scholarship with day-to-day responsibilities. When Adanna asked the fifth Joe about his future vision, he paused. Slowly, he shared a longing for a home he had never truly known, a place where he could root himself and protect those he loved. He spoke quietly, as though confessing a fragile dream he rarely voiced. His words were few but brimming with sincerity. Adanna sensed a depth of devotion in him, though she remained curious about his past. Could he be the man Prophet Mbeki had foreseen? There was a raw earnestness in his voice that tugged at her heart. Adanna retreated to the baobab grove. The massive trees, silent witnesses of generations, offered her a place to reflect. She replayed each Joe's vision, holding it against her own desires. A light breeze whispered through the thick trunks, as if the ancestors were encouraging her to listen to her inner voice. One by one, she considered their images and dreams. Then she asked herself which Joe truly ignited her soul, offering both stability and room for mutual growth. The question lingered like a gentle drumbeat in her chest. A hush fell over her thoughts, leaving space for an answer to bloom. That night, the ancestors visited Adanna in her sleep. She dreamt of standing in a wide field under a full moon, with 5 paths before her, each leading to a different horizon. A voice whispered, "Only one path is truly yours." The moonlight cast long shadows, hinting at both possibility and mystery. In the dream, she saw each Joe briefly appear at the mouth of a path, beckoning her forward. She woke at dawn, heart pounding, feeling the echo of the prophet's words in her soul. Time was running short. She needed to decide. The lingering remnants of the dream left her both uneasy and strangely determined. In the following weeks, Adanna spent simpler, more playful moments with each Joe. They cooked meals together, told jokes around the fire, and danced under the moonlit sky. She wanted to see which Joe made her laugh the most and feel most at ease. It was a test of ordinary joy, a crucial ingredient for a lasting partnership. She discovered that each man had a unique way of brightening her day. The first Joe's gentle humor, the second Joe's quick wit, the third Joe's silly songs, the fourth Joe's clever wordplay, and the fifth Joe's rare but heartfelt smiles. Laughter, she realized, could reveal truths words alone might miss. Exasperated by her indecision, Adanna once again turned to Mama Nafula. Her mother, combing her hair lovingly, spoke with quiet conviction. "True love is not a mere list of qualities, my daughter. It is a soft place where your soul rests." Her voice was steady, as though she had walked this path before. Her mother reminded her that marriage was a lifelong union of hearts, minds, and destinies. "Find the one in whose presence your spirit breathes easiest," Mama Nafula advised. "That is your real Joe." These words echoed in Adanna's mind as she considered how each Joe made her feel at a soul-deep level. Determined to follow her mother's wisdom, Adanna decided to face one of her greatest fears, crossing the treacherous old bridge over a steep ravine outside the village. She invited each Joe to accompany her, one by one. The prospect made her stomach flutter, yet she believed this test would lay bare the essence of their support. She believed that the man who gave her the most genuine reassurance and support during this ordeal might be the one. Her palms sweated at the thought, but she pressed on, trusting the ancestors to guide her. She remembered each Joe's qualities, wondering how they would respond in this vulnerable situation. With the first Joe, Adanna walked tentatively onto the swaying bridge. He held her hand, his grip steady. When her courage faltered, he paused, whispering calming words and encouraging her to continue. The wind whipped around them, rattling the wooden planks. She felt safe in his presence. They crossed successfully, and he smiled, proud of her bravery. Adanna felt a surge of gratitude. She realized that with him, fear was replaced by quiet assurance. The memory of his stable presence lingered long after they stepped off the final plank. Next, she invited the second Joe. Full of bravado, he insisted they hurry across the bridge. Halfway through, Adanna froze, heart pounding. He tried to coax her forward with jokes, but she felt more pressured than comforted. His quick words fluttered around her like birds in panic. They made it across, but Adanna's chest tightened with lingering anxiety. While she appreciated his confidence, she sensed he might not always adjust to her fears or her pace. A small voice told her that marriage required sensitivity as well as boldness, and she wondered if he could truly offer that balance. The third Joe, the musician, played a gentle tune on his flute as they stepped onto the bridge. The melody steadied her nerves, and they walked slowly to the midpoint. Then a sudden gust made the bridge shake. A discordant note slipped from his flute, mirroring the jolt of fear in Adanna's heart. He lost his footing briefly, and Adanna had to help him regain balance. They managed to cross, but she wondered if he could offer the kind of unwavering support she needed in life's most precarious moments. His musical gifts were undeniable, but so were his lapses in steadiness. The fourth Joe planned meticulously. He tied a rope around their waists and recited engineering principles to maintain balance. Though Adanna appreciated his methodical approach, the crossing felt more like a calculated exercise than a bonding experience. His focus on technicalities overshadowed emotional connection. They reached the other side safely, thanks to his precision. Yet Adanna questioned whether day-to-day life with him might sometimes lack spontaneity and emotional depth. Practical solutions were valuable, but she also craved a sense of warmth and effortless rapport. Finally, Adanna walked the old bridge with the fifth Joe. He offered no grand plan or performance. He simply placed her hand over his beating heart, silently conveying his steadiness. The wind seemed to calm slightly in response, as though honoring his quiet resolve. Step by step, they moved forward, with the fifth Joe pausing whenever her breath hitched. Without a word, he waited until she felt safe enough to continue. When they reached the other side, she sensed a profound, unspoken bond forming between them. It was an intimacy forged by silent understanding rather than verbal declarations. That evening, Adanna sat alone beneath the wide branches of a baobab tree. She replayed each crossing in her mind, recalling who had truly eased her fears and made her feel secure. The forest was alive with nighttime creatures, but she felt cocooned in her own thoughts. A single name echoed softly in her thoughts. She realized that there was one Joe whose presence calmed her like no other. Her heart pounded as she acknowledged the truth she had been searching for all along. A rush of both relief and trepidation filled her chest. Summoning her courage, Adanna invited all 5 Joes to meet her at the foot of the baobab tree at sunset. She stood with her chin raised, feeling both anxious and relieved, ready to speak her truth. The sky was streaked with oranges and purples, the same hues that had once colored her early dreams. Her voice trembled slightly as she thanked them for their kindness, support, and honesty. Then she announced her choice. "I have found my real Joe." Her eyes rested on one man, the one who had guided her across the bridge of fear with unwavering patience. She felt her pulse thrum, but her spirit felt curiously light. A flicker of disappointment passed through the first Joe's eyes, but he smiled kindly. He stepped forward and wished Adanna well, his voice free of bitterness. She knew his heart was pure and that he deserved happiness with someone who matched his gentle spirit. In his parting nod, she read acceptance and genuine goodwill. Though not chosen, the first Joe had taught her about steadfast devotion. She thanked him silently for the lesson, praying he would find love in his own time. As he turned to go, a soft breeze seemed to carry a quiet blessing in his wake. The second Joe bowed dramatically, then kissed her hand in a showy farewell. He congratulated her, promising to continue his travels and share stories of her throughout the land. He flashed one last charismatic grin, a final performance for an audience of 1. Adanna admired his flair, realizing they might have led a glamorous life together. But deep down, she knew her longing for a quiet, grounded existence might never truly align with his restless ambition. A pang of sadness touched her heart, mingled with respect for his enterprising spirit. The third Joe played a final, wistful tune on his flute. Tears shimmered in his eyes, but he managed a shaky smile. He placed a small carved flute charm in Adanna's hand as a parting gift. The notes lingered in the air, haunting yet beautiful. She thanked him for filling her days with melody and poetry. In her heart, she hoped he would someday find the muse that would anchor his wandering spirit. She closed her fingers around the charm, feeling the echoes of his music and wishing him fulfillment in his quest for art and love. The fourth Joe offered Adanna a special book of Proverbs inscribed with words of gratitude. He confessed he had learned as much from her sincerity as she had from his scholarly pursuits. He bowed his head gently, his eyes reflecting both intellect and a touch of sadness. She wished him well in building schools and spreading knowledge. Though she admired his intellect, she recognized the gap between their dreams, one she could not bridge as a life partner. She quietly hoped his wisdom would continue to flourish in the minds of children and fellow learners. Finally, the chosen Joe stepped forward, eyes brimming with relief and quiet joy. Adanna's heart pounded in her chest as he gently took her hands in his. She could sense the warmth of his palms, and a soft tremble of hope passed between them. In that moment, they understood they had formed a sacred bond. No grand speeches were needed. The warmth in their gaze spoke of a future woven with respect, understanding, and unwavering love. Even the rustling leaves seemed to hush, as though to witness the union destiny had ordained. Word spread quickly through Umutoni that Adanna had chosen her real Joe. Families rejoiced, and Mama Nafula wept tears of joy. The village elders nodded in approval, feeling the ancestors' blessing upon the couple. A cheerful bustle overtook daily life as wedding preparations commenced. Preparations for the wedding began in earnest. Drums were gathered, ceremonial cloth was ordered, and everyone eagerly awaited the celebration of a union once shrouded in confusion. The air crackled with communal excitement, as though the entire village felt gratified by the resolution of the prophecy. On the eve of the wedding, the women of the village surrounded Adanna, decorating her with intricate henna designs and braiding her hair with beads. The sweet scent of jasmine mingled with the sound of laughter. In those moments, Adanna felt a tender camaraderie with the women who had supported her journey. Meanwhile, the fifth Joe prepared quietly with his own circle of friends. He received blessings and counsel from elder men who reminded him that marriage was a sacred bond, requiring patience and devotion. Their words seemed to resonate with him deeply, affirming the silent strength Adanna had glimpsed. At dawn, the wedding ceremony commenced under the ancient baobab tree. Vibrant kente cloths and fresh flowers adorned the gathering space. The rhythmic beat of drums guided Adanna's footsteps as she walked toward her groom. Sunlight filtered through the broad branches, creating a natural cathedral of warmth. They exchanged vows of fidelity and love, a moment brimming with reverence. The villagers cheered, dancing in celebration of the prophecy that had come true. "Your husband's name will be Joe." Adanna felt tears of happiness blur her vision, understanding that fate had woven every thread of this tapestry. The festivities continued deep into the night, with platters of jollof rice, roasted yams, and plantains passed among guests. Revelers formed circles around glowing fires, dancing and chanting blessings for the newlyweds. Laughter merged with the night's music, sealing the couple's union with communal joy. Adanna and her Joe were the radiant center of it all, hands clasped and hearts synchronized. In every laugh and shared glance, they reaffirmed their mutual devotion, grateful for the winding path that led them to each other. The distant stars shimmered like silent witnesses, approving the love born of faith and perseverance. In the weeks and months that followed, Adanna and her Joe settled into a peaceful routine. Their home became a place of warmth and generosity, reflecting the unity of two hearts guided by love and understanding. Mornings started with mutual smiles, and evenings ended with quiet gratitude. Whenever they strolled by the river or sought solace beneath the baobab tree, they remembered the prophet's words and the journey that brought them together, and so they lived out their days in harmony, filled with gratitude for a destiny written in the winds of Umutoni. Their shared life felt like a testament to hope and trust. Soon after the wedding, villagers could sense a different aura around Adanna and her husband. Their daily tasks, fetching water, tending the garden, and caring for livestock, seemed lighter because they approached them with shared joy. Even mundane chores became opportunities to bond through laughter or gentle conversation. In the early mornings, they would rise before the sun, greeting the day with whispered prayers of gratitude. Their simple devotion to each other was a testament to the strength born of true love. Sometimes they would pause between tasks simply to appreciate the hush of dawn together. Adanna's husband, still referred to mostly as Joe by the villagers, decided to expand his small farming plot. With the help of neighbors, he cleared new land near the river, planting crops that thrived in moist soil. He worked with a quiet determination, reminiscent of the day he fixed Adanna's roof in the storm. Adanna would often bring him a calabash of cool water as he worked. They'd exchange smiles that needed no words, both understanding that their labor was building not just a farm, but a future of abundance. Even small gestures, like a gentle pat on his shoulder, felt charged with a love that had overcome obstacles. One evening, after the day's work, Adanna found herself thinking of the other 4 Joes. She wondered if the first Joe had found the gentle soul who would share his love for farming, or if the second Joe still dazzled markets far and wide. A nostalgic tug on her heart reminded her of the many lessons they had taught her. She mentioned these musings to her husband, who nodded thoughtfully. Together, they sent silent blessings into the twilight, hoping each man's path led him to a destiny as fulfilling as theirs. Their union was a tapestry woven from diverse threads, each Joe having contributed a strand of insight. Mama Nafula was overjoyed to see her daughter thriving in married life. She visited often, bringing spice mixes and herbs that added flavor to their meals. Each visit was punctuated by the proud smile of a mother who had nurtured her child into womanhood. The sweet aroma of her cooking often signaled lively family dinners. She also offered gentle reminders that marriage required continuous nurturing. A good marriage is like a well-tended garden, Mama Nafula said. Water it with love, weed out misunderstanding, and it will flourish. Her counsel continued to resonate in Adanna's heart, guiding her through everyday ups and downs. One afternoon, a village messenger arrived, carrying a bundle of books addressed to Adanna. A small note revealed they were from the fourth Joe, the scholar, who had gone on to establish a traveling library. She felt a warm fondness, remembering his methodical ways and big dreams. He sent his best wishes, hoping the books would inspire the children of Umutoni. Grateful for his thoughtful gesture, Adanna placed the books in the communal reading hut, grateful for connections that endured beyond the choice she'd made. It comforted her to see how each Joe continued on his own path of growth. Some evenings, as Adanna and her husband relaxed under the stars, they heard distant flute music carried on the wind. It reminded them of the third Joe, whose melodies once enchanted the village. She would close her eyes, recalling the soft echoes of his music at sunset. Rather than envy or regret, Adanna felt a soothing nostalgia. She realized that each Joe had contributed something unique to her story, shaping the woman she had become. True gratitude replaced any lingering confusion. She hoped the musicians' melodies were finding appreciative ears across many horizons. One day, a caravan arrived in Umutoni, bringing exotic spices, colorful fabrics, and news from distant towns. To Adanna's surprise, the second Joe was among the traders, looking as vibrant as ever. His grin was as radiant as before, though perhaps tempered with new experiences. He greeted her with genuine warmth, congratulating her on her marriage. Though their paths had diverged, the respect they held for each other was clear. Adanna felt relief in knowing old friendships could remain intact. She wished him luck in his travels, hoping he would always find the applause and excitement he cherished. Time seemed to fly as the anniversary of the harvest festival approached. This year, Adanna and her Joe took part in organizing the event, eager to give back to the community that had supported them. Their shared sense of purpose forged a deeper bond as they coordinated tasks with mutual understanding. They led the preparations with joy, coordinating dances, music, and feasts. In their every action, the villagers saw a couple deeply in tune, reflecting the love and harmony that had guided them from the start. In the swirl of planning and laughter, they never forgot the gratitude that anchored their relationship. As the festival lights danced in her husband's eyes, Adanna felt waves of gratitude wash over her. She remembered how Prophet Mbeki's simple prophecy had set her on an extraordinary journey. The hum of drums and the scent of celebratory meals reminded her of how far she had come since her first timid queries about love. Though the prophet had passed before seeing the fulfillment of his words, she sensed his spirit watching over them, content that destiny had been honored. In silent prayer, she thanked him for revealing her path, A gentle breeze rustled the festival lanterns, as if offering a whispered blessing from beyond. Despite their growing happiness, life remained life, full of chores, small irritations, and occasional disputes. Yet each disagreement was quickly met with listening ears and willingness to compromise. Adanna learned that a true partnership required patience, empathy, and daily acts of kindness. These were the building blocks of a strong union. Adanna's husband proved day by day that he was the steady anchor she had glimpsed during their crossing of the old bridge, always ready to shoulder burdens together. Whenever conflict arose, they tackled it with the same spirit of collaboration that had once saved the crops from locusts. News of Adanna's marriage and her husband's success in farming drew relatives from distant villages. Cousins and old friends arrived, filling their home with laughter and shared meals. Each visitor brought stories of faraway places, and the lively chatter wove threads of fellowship into their daily rhythm. During these gatherings, Adanna felt an even greater sense of unity. Her home had become a beacon of comfort, a testament to the love story that had once been so uncertain, but was now the foundation of a flourishing life. She marveled at how faith, guidance, and resilience had converged to create this happiness. Shortly after their first anniversary, Adanna discovered she was expecting a child. Excitement bubbled in her heart, and she feared and hoped in equal measure for the future unfolding before them. When she told her husband, his eyes shone with joyous tears, and he embraced her gently. Her husband was overjoyed. He began carving a small cradle out of sturdy wood, determined to create a loving environment for their growing family. Each chisel stroke was a promise to protect and cherish what they had built together. Sometimes Adanna would pause in her tasks just to watch him work, tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. As Adanna's belly grew, the women of the village came together to impart wisdom. They taught her lullabies, nursing tips, and how to weave strong yet soft blankets for the baby. The communal spirit reminded her that motherhood was a sacred bond connecting generations. Mama Nafula oversaw every detail, ensuring her daughter was well prepared. Under the warmth of maternal guidance, Adanna felt more connected than ever to the legacy of Umutoni's women, stretching back generations. Gentle laughter and encouraging words turned her anxious anticipation into confident expectation. In the quiet of evening, Adanna often placed her hands on her belly, feeling the gentle movements within. She would recall her initial visit to Prophet Mbeki, the prophecy that guided her, and the confusion that followed upon meeting 5 Joes. The memory felt dreamlike, as though it had happened to someone else. Now, those memories felt like stepping stones to her present joy. She understood that destiny, while mysterious, could also be compassionate, leading hearts to the precise place they needed to be. She whispered thanks to the ancestors each night, cradled by hope and promise. In anticipation of the birth, the village elders offered their blessings and counsel. They reminded Adanna that a child was both an individual soul and a reflection of its parents' unity. Their weathered faces lit up with a tender pride, recalling countless births that had shaped the village's history. They also cautioned her and her husband about the patience required in parenthood. As you nurtured your love, so must you nurture this child. Patience, kindness, and understanding will guide you, they said. Adanna and her husband absorbed each word, determined to honor the wisdom of their forebears. On a peaceful morning, Adanna felt the first pangs of labor. Supported by midwives, she delivered a healthy baby, a daughter with bright, curious eyes. The village erupted in celebration, welcoming the new soul into their midst. Soft lullabies mixed with joyful cries as the community gathered to greet the newborn. Exhausted but elated, Adanna cradled the tiny life in her arms. Her husband stood by her side, tears of joy shining on his cheeks. Together, they named her Zawadi, meaning gift. The baby's soft coos felt like a promise of continued blessings. In the days following Zawadi's birth, Adanna and her husband found themselves forging an even deeper bond. Every midnight feeding, every cooing sound, every shared responsibility drew them closer. In the shadows of sleepless nights, they discovered the glow of unconditional love. Their home filled with the soft hum of lullabies and the tender hush of parents soothing an infant. Though sleepless nights were abundant, the love that flowed through their little family was immeasurable. Each sunrise brought renewed gratitude, and each day ended in a peace they cherished. One afternoon, as Adanna rocked Zawadi to sleep, she thought of the path that had led her here. She whispered thanks to each Joe who had crossed her life, for without them, her heart might never have understood what it truly desired. A certain serenity enveloped her as she acknowledged the roles they had played. It struck her that each Joe had gifted her a piece of wisdom, gentleness, ambition, art, knowledge, and quiet devotion. These pieces, once scattered, now fit perfectly into the mosaic of her fulfilled destiny. She felt an unspoken harmony in the tapestry of her experiences, unified at last. Zawadi grew each day, her laughter filling the home with sparkling energy. Adanna's husband expanded his farming project, and other villagers adopted his innovative methods. Prosperity, in modest form, began to spread across Umutoni. The synergy of their efforts seemed to bless the entire community. As their daughter toddled around the courtyard, the couple dreamed of teaching her the values that had once guided Adanna. She would learn humility, kindness, courage, and the power of trust in the ancestors. Each lesson they imparted was woven with love, a reflection of the prophecy's ultimate fruition. Years passed in a rhythm of seasons, harvests, festivals, and the laughter of children. Zawadi soon had siblings to play with. Adanna and her Joe watched their family thrive, reflecting on how one prophetic name had shaped their journey. The cycle of life continued, each turn guided by gratitude and unity. Under the shade of the great baobab, where Adanna had once stood anxious and uncertain, she now sat in peace. Her husband's hand clasped hers, and their children giggled at their feet. Indeed, they had found their own happily ever after, woven from love, destiny, and the sweet whisper of the ancestors' guiding wind. If you listen to the story, please subscribe and share.